Welcome back to Prime Your Life. Stress. It's that one word that seems to just grip us at the worst possible opportunity. And stress can enable you to sometimes perform better, but often we label it as something that can take us away from our best potential. And today I have got an expert in the house. In fact, I've got a doctor, and I don't often have a doctor on my screen, but we've got a doctor in the house today to tell us all about this habit or this bad habit of stress. And most importantly, how we can unshackle ourselves from stress. Dr. Rebecca Williams, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thank you so much, Chris. I'm well, and it's lovely to be here talking about this very important subject.
Well, it is something that I know a lot of people that I work with from a client perspective talk about this. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. And they get themselves all worked up about it. But I'm curious, what made you get into this particular practice of helping people with a part of their health that's so important?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. I spent nearly 25 years working as a GP, and I began to realize the number of people that were coming to the GP or coming to see me with problems that actually were caused by stress. And we always think about stress and mental health, but actually there's a whole variety of physical health symptoms and also symptoms caused by unhealthy ways of coping with stress, such as alcohol, overeating, and things like that. So, yeah, I felt frustrated by the lack of time and decided I wanted to have an opportunity to help people in a more long-term kind of way.
So tell me more about that. A doctor in a seat in a NHS practice, I guess, or even a private practice, you're given a window of time to talk to the person about some of the
Right.
symptoms that they're having. How easy is it then to sit in that seat and get into the root cause of perhaps some of these symptoms that could be related to stress?
It's not easy because literally you have, well, I was lucky. I had 15 minutes where I worked. You've got to allow time for the patient to come in and start talking about what's going on. They often have more than one problem. You've got to make sure you're happy that there's nothing really serious underlying that. And then if you've got the time, ideally you want to just ask a few more questions. Ask, how's life? What's going on? And then they start talking, and then they start to have a greater understanding. And I created a handout actually for people because I didn't have the time to do everything in the surgery. So I gave them a handout which just asked them questions to think about and then gave them a number of tools that they could try themselves. And ultimately, actually, that handout is what became my little book, Dealing with Stress the Mind, Body, Spirit Way, although it's been updated a few times since then.
Hmm. And as a doctor, could you actually be as direct to say, I think you're stressed?
Yes.
You
Yes,
could.
yeah, obviously you have to word it carefully. You don't want, because some people think that's you brushing them aside and not taking their symptoms seriously, especially they don't understand the complexity of stress and how it can affect them. But I did have one gentleman once who was describing some very odd neurological-like symptoms that didn't fit any diagnosis. And I was thinking, oh, I can't quite make sense of this. And then I asked him about his life and the number of different things he was dealing with, big things. I just thought, this is stress. And he said, but I don't feel stressed. And I said, but this is the thing. Some people feel it up here. Others don't. They think they're doing fine, but then their body expresses the stress and the problems. So, so we had a long chat about things, and ultimately things improved for him. So it's very interesting.
We often label stress as something that's negative, but I've got a little quote here from Mark Twain, and he says, there are two types of speakers, those that are nervous and those that are liars. And the inference on that suggests that actually by being nervous and being a little bit anxious about your speaking performance, it could enable it to be better. And I'm a firm believer of that. I'd say that if I walk into a room complacent and not feeling nerves, then actually that is me not honoring the audience. What are your views on the word stress? Is it a negative, or could we channel our inner stress to be something that could be positive for us?
Yeah, that that is a complex and interesting question because I'm just going to, as an aside, talk about the stress response because ultimately stress is all about our acute stress response, the fright, fight, flight response people may know it as. This is an evolutionary adaptation to life-threatening, dangerous situations, which is all about our survival. It's designed to make us fast and strong. So when we're in danger, a primitive part of our brain recognizes it and generates the response. So it activates the systems we need. For instance, our heart rate goes up and muscle tone increases. And it suppresses the systems we don't need. And this includes our gut, but also the front part of our brain where we do our higher functioning. So this is where we do our rational thinking, where we make decisions, solve problems, control our emotions, process and remember things. And that's good. You don't want to be analysing a situation if you're being chased by an armed person. So anyway, once the danger's passed, you run away, fought it off, everything goes back to normal. And that is the stress response, and that is excellent. But the brain can't tell the difference between that sort of situation and anything else that someone's feeling stressed or anxious about. So hence the same response. So in terms of public speaking, I certainly am somebody who feels nervous. And one reason why that's a good thing is it means you prepare. If you know you're going to find it stressful and it creates anxiety in you, then you're going to prepare well. You're going to do the things you need to do to make it go as well as you can. On the day, yes, nerves can give you a bit of an energy and a sort of dynamic energy, but they can also have the opposite effect. So I think it's important to be able to manage those nerves. Otherwise, they can destroy the event. And as a violin player, I used to get terrible nerves before exams, or I did a few concertos where I had to be the soloist. Terrible nerves. And playing the violin, if you're nervous, your bow starts doing that, and then that just makes you even more nervous. So I'm afraid
I'd love to get into some of the techniques for managing that. Was it sort of really bad vibrato when you were doing that violin?
Well, vibrato is the left hand. It was the bow bouncing. So
there you go. I've just admitted completely things that I don't know about violins. Okay, very good. Back into that primitive warrior then. I'm assuming that some warriors would have been really good at managing fight or flight and therefore managing stress. And would that be the case for the modern warrior of business or speaker or practitioner? Then actually they can handle stress differently compared to others.
Yes, and also people feel stress in different situations, and this is fairly fundamental. Stress usually involves anxiety and pressure. And that combination or one or the other creates the stress. So some people are naturally more anxious and naturally more aware of things that can go wrong, or especially if you struggle with your self-esteem or self-worth, then you worry what people think about you. You worry that you're going to mess up, people are going to judge you. Whereas other people are more confident and don't get anxious. They're just quite resilient naturally. Again, pressure, people respond differently to pressure. We have people at one end of a scale where pressure's stressful and they function at their best when they're not under pressure. At the other end, we have people who thrive under pressure. They are energized and motivated by it. And we have everything in between, and your own position can shift depending on what else is going on in your life. So, I don't know that it's just about whether you manage stress better, although that's obviously a factor. It's also the extent to which you feel stress. And definitely there's variety in that, depending on all sorts of things, including your genetics, your childhood experiences, your current situation, your finances, your health, your relationships. All these things can feed into where you're at and how you're feeling.
Well, for anybody who is thinking, well, what's the point? Could you give us a bit more knowledge here about the impacts of stress? If we're fighting and flighting and we're running away from that attack in our primeval era, that's fine because it's short-lived. But what are the implications of constantly worrying about the board presentation, or whether or not my lead is going to like what I've said, or even in a panic situation preparing to go on holiday and wondering if you're going to get all your flights, or you're going to lose your tickets, or is your passport expired? What's the implication of living under manic, uncontrollable stress all the time, Rebecca, from a doctor's perspective?
Yeah, well, it's pretty vast because, as I've already intimated, your physiology changes when you're stressed, and your physiology is not designed to be in that changed state for long periods of time. So over periods of time, that can create problems for your body and the way it functions, and also for your brain and the way that functions. At its simplest level, I've had patients in, say, with palpitations. Now, we know that part of your stress response is for your heart rate to go up to prepare you to run or to fight. But if you're having palpitations because you're worrying about things, that's really upsetting and worrying. And people come and ask me, about what's going on. People might have panic attacks. Again, heart rate's going up, breathing rate's going up. People get muscle aches and pains, muscles go tense. So you get the physical symptoms. You also get changes in the chemicals within the brain, which can lead to worsening anxiety, very low mood, and as we all know, to despair, and to some people taking their own lives. So because anxiety distorts our perception, it makes us interpret things wrongly. We start assuming that people don't like us, or that they'd be better off without us. And all these distortions can affect our mental health. Also, remember I said our higher functioning gets switched off. So even our daily functioning will be affected. So maybe in my working day, I can't concentrate properly. Then I'm aware I'm not on the ball, and I start getting more anxious and having to double check things. I forget what someone's told me, or I forget a meeting. I'd start losing confidence and think, oh my goodness, I'm going to be fired. Oh my goodness, if I get fired, I'll not be able to pay my mortgage. And thoughts can just escalate in this kind of catastrophizing way. So even at its most basic level, even without any health implications, it can affect your functioning. And then I know I'm talking on, but just one more thing. We've then got the chronic impact of stress. So we know that chronic stress increases your risk of heart disease, of strokes, of atrial fibrillation, an abnormal heart rhythm. We think we know it actually plays a role in autoimmune conditions because of its impact on the immune system. The other thing just slipped my mind. Sorry, I can't remember what the other thing was I was going to say, but yes,
Well,
it can be
I think
enormously.
I have got some knowledge on it, but of course it can then lead to the addictive tendencies that we have to reach for things to try to cope with our stress, such as alcohol, intoxicants, porn, because you're looking for a way to silence the noise. And as you've already said, the end of that curve could be taking your own life, which obviously is the most tragic consequence of all. There's a man that I've again done a quote on, and Jerry Seinfeld, sorry, not Epstein. Well, we'll rewind that bit and edit it out. There's a man that I was researching before we did this, and Jerry Seinfeld says, according to most studies, people's number one fear is public speaking. Number two is death. So speaking seems to be quite high up there. Aside from that, Rebecca, when you were sat as a doctor and even in your patient work now, what are the real triggers in the modern day world that seems to create stress for people?
I mean, there are many. I mean, work is a big one. And a lot of that is about overwhelm, relationship issues in work, not, worrying about losing their job, or just the pressures of work. And again, as I've said, if people are stressed, then things are taking much longer. So they start sacrificing evenings and weekends to try and cope, which is the worst possible thing to do. Financial pressures that people are facing, a lot of relationship issues. We had a lot of those in general practice. Health anxiety, people worrying about symptoms, especially if they've known someone who's maybe died of cancer. Then they start becoming very aware of any physical sensations and worrying about what that might be. Parenting struggles, just general kind of low self-worth and kind of people pleasing and anxiety, and therefore you're constantly trying to live to please other people and never completely at peace with yourself. A grief over a big life event, maybe a divorce or a separation, or even a health condition, which has been a significant change for you. Also the grief of a loss of a loved one or a pet,
Yeah.
or a close friend. So, and then often there's a whole mixture of all these things. And so trying to help people disentangle those things. And that's something I love doing now in my online one-to-one sessions. Often it's a whole mixture of things that come to us at the point that someone has admitted that they're struggling. And we just literally just take the time to explore everything, as well as doing the basic general advice on how to help people kind of, I try and use the analogy of a kettle. So if you think a kettle that's boiling and then it's just about boiling and then boils, that's kind of your acute stress. So that might be public nerve stress or something like that, or just all the stress that tips you over the edge. But then you've got the heating of the water to that point. That is your kind of basic resilience. So if I'm getting people who are up here ready to do that and boil, I need to bring them down to here, and that's my job. And that is about nurturing mental, physical, and emotional health and giving people the tools to do that and the
Okay, I
reminders.
promise we'll get into more tools
Oh, sorry.
as
Yes.
we
Yeah.
carry on the conversation. The other thing that I'm really curious about is the impact of marketeers, socials, media companies. They know what triggers us because they know our primeval fight or flight system. Is it fair that we are hunted by media and marketeers playing to
Yeah.
the knowledge of our survival system that makes us want to search for comfort?
And also what we're searching for is certainty. We do not like uncertainty. We like to feel secure. So when insurance companies and all sorts of other marketeers tell us that if we buy this, then we can relax, or if we look this way, we can relax. I think it's cruel, but at the same time, it's what happens. So yeah, there's a lot of psychology to marketing, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there's a famous phrase from the American broadsheets, and it says, if it bleeds, it leads. And it's that aspect of
Uh,
make the headline as gory and as worry, anxiety
mm,
causing as possible. And then, of course, they watch the clicks and the shares. And from that,
wow.
they see what works and what doesn't. And
Yeah.
behind every media news company, there is somebody there monitoring what works and what
Wow.
doesn't, and then feeds us more of the things that actually don't enable us to be probably the best humans.
And the trouble is, of course, that media is so intrusive now because it's 24/7 on phones and the internet, and that is where self-control and boundary setting, personal boundary setting, becomes so important. You know, we can't control what they put out, but we can control whether we look at it and how we respond to it.
All right. Well, that's going to lead us nicely into the sort of the second half. But before we do that, can you just give us a flavor of, without obviously declaring patient name or details, somebody that you have worked with either as a clinician or in your current guise now as a stress coach? Just a picture of who they were when they first came in to you and what kind of symptoms they were demonstrating as a case study.
Yeah, okay. Well, I suppose the case of Mary, obviously not her real name, comes to mind. She was this is as a client in my current role. She was a hardworking, intelligent woman in a pretty high-powered job, but who struggled most of her life with anxiety, depression, PTSD, and significant weight issues. And I think her light bulb moment was when we were exploring her childhood and recognizing that very many multiple negative childhood experiences had led to chronic low self-esteem, which in turn had led to people pleasing. She spent her whole life trying to keep everybody else happy, and to comfort eating, a very unhealthy relationship with food, which had led to problems. Um, so I worked with her a lot on her self-worth, helped her to really appreciate the extreme love that her husband and her daughter had for her, and to start valuing herself. And we also looked at healthy ways of managing anxious and negative thoughts, and trying to avoid this catastrophizing that was a real problem for her, and also managing stress in a healthy way. And if you don't mind, I'll just read a clip from a 5-star Trustpilot review that she sent me. Is that all right?
Sure.
Um, this is just a part of it. Working with Rebecca has been a life-changing experience for me. I had 3 one-to-one sessions with her, which were the most beneficial treatment I've ever had. I now like myself. This is huge. My life is changing in so many ways for the positive. My outlook on life is so much more assured, and situations that would normally send me spiraling into a pit of anxiety and stress are now manageable. This is thanks to Rebecca. Um, yeah, it's a very personal approach I take with people, really trying to meet them where they're at, help them understand themselves, what stress means for them, and then equipping them with the tools to help them
And
move
how does that
forward.
make you feel versus your 15-minute window when you were a doctor? How does that feel now to have that testimonial and impact that you're able to give a person through your work?
It's the most amazing feeling. It's the most amazing feeling. I mean, as a doctor, yes, you got gratitude, and it was lovely when you know, diagnosed something correctly and helped somebody, and likewise had people sort of similar but I just had less time to help them. But knowing that I've been able to give a much more complete transition or change for somebody that will hopefully, well, seems to have changed her life going forwards is a wonderful thing. And
Yeah.
and I suppose I am still passionate about the NHS, and if I can do anything to try and reduce the inflow or the inflow or footfall into the NHS, then I think that's wonderful. Trying to help people be more confident and able to manage life themselves in a healthy way and feel good.
Well done on Mary, so to speak. One of the things before we talk about stress, one of the things that always is curious for me is how you see people amazingly productive the day or the 2 days before they go on holiday, and they
Yeah.
seem to be like a superhero. Anything task caps up, they're like, done, 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 done.
Mm.
And this is curious to me as to how sometimes we can switch our modality to be super effective, super productive, and super efficient, and yet other times we can wane into slightly less
Um,
productive or less efficient. What's going on there, Rebecca, in terms of sometimes we can, sometimes we can't just process so much task requests?
Yeah, that's complicated, isn't it? I mean, we have to just think of the potential facets. When I think of a woman, females, we have to remember their hormones. Their hormone milieu is changing all the time, whether it's the monthly cycle, or whether it's the perimenopause and postmenopause. But certainly, hormones can play a massive role in someone's ability to function and cope. Also, what else is going on in somebody's life. So, if someone is feeling stressed, they may be not sleeping very well, they may be worrying about something. As I said, their ability to think clearly and make decisions is reduced. So suddenly you're kind of feeling like it's chaos and you're in this fog and you can't get down to anything. We know that there's a lot of talk about neurodiversity and ADHD, and we know that a big feature of ADHD is procrastination. That's just the way they're wired. And then they can also have periods of hyper focus where they're incredibly efficient, incredibly driven and focused. So there will be personality traits. There will be how well you've slept. There will be times of the day when you're more productive. And when I'm talking to people about procrastination, I always say, well, when are your power hours? When are you most productive? That's the time to do the most challenging tasks. And also just to be kind to yourself and think, right, you know what, it's just not working for me right now. And by stressing about it, I'm making it worse. I'm going to walk away, do something nice for a few minutes or half an hour, whatever. Then I'm going to come back. And yeah, so there's lots of factors going on, I think.
When you were that doctor and maybe you had to prescribe a sick note to say stress, and therefore you have a period of time where they may be encouraged to take some time off, what else came with your recommendation that wouldn't be prescriptive medicine to try to intervene with the stress causalities that they're feeling?
Yeah, now that is a lovely and very interesting question, because I have come across, certainly in my client work, quite a few people who've been signed off with stress and then just been left. And the impact of that has been enormous in terms of their loss of community, their loss of sense of belonging, sense of identity, frustration, and anxious thoughts have taken over. So it's vital that people are not just signed off and left. Even if you're phoning once a week to check on them, you've got to give them something to support them and try and restore them. So you're quite right. I would never sign anybody off without being very proactive in that sphere. And that's where my handout would always be given out. And I would ask people, I would talk about the trying to get up at a good regular time, trying to create structure for your day, trying to get out, some exercise, having regular meals, trying to find something useful to do, your attitude of gratitude, noticing the positives. There might be specific things to work on, like anxious thoughts or maybe grief that needs to be reflected upon and given permission to be felt. I've had people who've had to be strong and haven't allowed themselves the pain of grief or have run from the pain of grief. So sometimes that needs working through. So yes, it's very much dependent on the situation, but it's vital that if people are off, they've often been in sinking to that point of going off. So they're not in a
Mm.
good place, and we need to work on rebuilding them and helping restore them, as well as identifying the issue that caused it, especially if it's a work issue.
Very good. And what does proximity to people do in terms of how people can affect that feeling of stress?
Sorry, what do you mean? Do you mean causing it or helping relieve it?
Well, it could be both in that if the environment that they're living in or that the environment they're
Mm.
working in is being surrounded by people that are making them feel stressed, how big a factor is that as part of the
Yeah.
bigger picture of stress?
So again, that's a really interesting line, isn't it? Making them feel stressed. So this is the problem a lot of people have is blaming an external factor. But maybe we need to look at why we're feeling stressed. So actually, I had a client quite recently who'd been signed off for a long time, and I was contacted by HR to see whether I could try and help get her back to work. And she was very much, it was all about the workplace that had let her down. And through the course of our sessions, she had a highly complex childhood, a lot of very challenging experiences. She had very, very low self-worth. And I made the point, I said, look, just imagine I go into the coffee room at work, and on my way out, I bump into a friend and a colleague, and I go, hi, and they ghost me. Now, if I'm confident and I'm not relying on external validation, I would be thinking, oh, I wonder what's wrong with her. That's not normal for her to blank me. I better go and see what's going on and ask her how she is or he is. If I'm someone who struggles with self-worth and relies on other people to make me feel okay about myself, my instinct would be, oh, why doesn't he or she like me anymore? What have I done wrong? And that was a light bulb moment for her to realize that the same situation could be perceived so differently depending on her sense of self. So when we're feeling stressed by somebody else, I suppose we need to ask why we're feeling stressed. And it may be that they're doing something that's upsetting us. I know some people find a lot of noise stressful, so that is a fact. And maybe it's a case of trying to work with that and find a quiet space for them to work, or headphones or something. Conversely, others find it very hard working on their own, working from home on their own. So maybe as an employer or manager, maybe you can find a way to get them into the office, or find ways to help them be more sociable as part of the company online. So again, it's very individual, but it's about asking the questions. It's about being curious and not making assumptions.
One of my favorite quotes is, I think it's an African proverb that says, when you're comfortable with the enemy within, there is no enemy outside that can ever hurt you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very good, isn't it? That's very true. Very
Well, it's not
insightful.
mine. I'm stealing it
Yeah,
from
no, I
somebody
know.
else. Can we talk about then solutions? First of all, perhaps a short-term stress we're feeling, and we're just about to click online and we're doing a presentation, and you can feel the palpitations, the nervous sweat, and your heart rate increasing, blood pressure, arming you for really that combat, which is
Yeah,
your presentation. In a short-term scenario there, Rebecca, what can we do to
yeah.
try to center ourselves, to make us feel less anxious, nervous, and more calm?
Yeah. So these are kind of called the grounding tools you're alluding to here. Fundamentally, number one, I would say, is breathing, because as you remember, the fright, fight, flight response makes us breathe short, shallow, and fast, ready to run. So we're breathing really fast, and when we breathe, when we're feeling anxious like that, that's what we tend to do. We're breathing shallow and fast. So we need to have a technique to help us just slow our breathing down, and diaphragmatic breathing is a really good one to know. If you remember your biology days, the diaphragm is that massive muscle between the chest and the abdomen. And as we breathe in, that goes down as our ribs come out. And then as we breathe out, it comes up and the ribs come back in. Now, when we're stressed, often we do all our breathing from here. There's no diaphragmatic movement. So we need to make an effort to breathe to the bottom of our lungs, push the diaphragm down. I won't go on about it because it's something you can easily Google and look on YouTube. But it's diaphragmatic breathing. And then if you can combine that with 6-8, so in for 6, out for 8, or box breathing, in for 3, hold for 3, out for 3, hold for 3, then that can help. Just so people know, movement of the diaphragm actually triggers a nerve impulse to the heart, which slows it down. So physiologically, diaphragmatic breathing calms your body. So breathing is really important. Another really lovely tool, I think, is the 5-4-3-2-1 mindful exercise. And this is about your senses. It's about bombarding your brain with information so it's distracted from what's going on. So you literally say out loud or to yourself, 5 things I can see, and then really focus on 5 things that you can see and say them. Name them. Then 4 things I can touch or feel. So you might just touch things around you, or you might feel the sun on your face or whatever. 3 things I can hear. And if you're struggling to hear 3 things, make some sounds. 2 things I can smell and 1 I can taste. And often you won't need to get all the way to taste before you feel calmer. And generally the senses are a wonderful calming gift. So, and people have different ones that they're more sensitive to. So if smell is a sense that's really calming for you, and a particular smell, maybe a particular perfume or your partner's scent or something, have a hanky or something that has that scent that you can just take it out and smell it. If it's touch, maybe have something in your pocket that you can touch or squeeze. That can be really helpful too. And if you're in the middle of doing your presentation and you suddenly have this panic rising again, make sure you've got a glass of water. You pick it up, you look at it, you feel it, you take a sip, and really be mindful of that sip of water. And again, that will help to calm you down.
And what's your favorite technique that you like to? I'm sure you get nervous.
I do.
You must.
I do, actually, as you know from my violin playing. I do. I would say the sip of water and the breathing for me.
Very good. Well, that's a short-term intervention tactic that I fully applaud all of those. And as you say, there are many Google tactics out there that will help you with that. But I'm sure you'll say go to a specialist who's got the relevant qualifications in breath work or other factors. If it's a bigger thing now, and let's just say we're in an employment situation that we have no opportunity to get out of, we're feeling nervous about maybe a redundancy situation or a change in circumstances, or even with the advent of AI at the moment, there's a lot of threat around how that's going to change things for us. And we just feel helpless, and we feel as though we have no way out of this, and it's a ever decreasing circle of doom. What would your high level tactics, maybe just break them down one by one, and we can play with some of those as to what things that you would start to try to get people to work on with a much bigger picture of a problem.
Yeah. So number 1, I think, would have to be the serenity prayer, because as you've already described, it's that sense of helplessness and feeling like you've got no control over your situation. So we need to find a way to take some control. So the serenity prayer: grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The acronym CIA, control, influence, accept, says the same thing. So what I would say to people is write down everything that is making you feel stressed right now. Everything, in as much detail as possible. Then
why write it down? What's the physical mechanism there that's happening as part of that interchange?
It's creating, well, you could speak it, but then you forget maybe what you've said and haven't said. But what's happening there is you're articulating some of the chaos in your brain. And then you can see, and then you look down your list and you say to yourself, which of these things are within my sphere of influence or control? And you circle those things. So, for instance, maybe your relationship is being impacted by stuff that's going on at work and all your worries, and your partner's getting peed off with you, and now that's become a source of stress. You could think, right, well, okay, I need to start ring fencing some time with my partner to reconnect with them. Do you see what I mean? So, maybe I'm getting really stressed because I'm seeing everything on the news, everything that's going on around the world, and it's just so awful, these harrowing images I'm seeing. And I might think, well, I can't do anything. I could write to my MP. I can't do anything to change it, but I could write to my MP. I could maybe donate some money. I could stop watching the screen. I could pray for those people. So again, it's saying, what can I do? Let me focus on the things I can do and not on the things that I can't change. And likewise, a partner, sometimes we get peed off with our partners. We want them to change. We can't change them. But by changing our response to the things that irritate us, sometimes that actually changes the dynamic and even your partner's behavior. So that's really important, is to gain some control by focusing on the things that you are in a position to change.
It seems a lot of that is about getting it out. It reminds me of a story, I think, whether it's true or not, Abraham Lincoln, when he had a particularly annoying adversary and he wanted to express himself, he'd write a letter to the enemy or the exponent of his anger, but he'd never send the letter. He'd put it in his drawer, and allegedly they found all these letters. Hopefully the enemies never found out that they were his scribbling notes. But is that really important, just to get it out of our brains and out of our system, to physically feel as though it's been purged?
Yeah, so I think there's two things. I think the serenity prayer is good because it helps direct your actions. But on conversely, then we've got situations where we're really upset about something, or maybe clients of mine, they've looked back at their past and they've got this lingering anger towards certain people in their childhood, and that's not helpful. And or someone has died and they've not really grieved it. So I've encouraged them to write a letter to that person, as you say, not to send it, but to write the letter, just offloading everything that you need to say. And then that is incredibly therapeutic, just as is talking. I mean, I had a patient once who had been such a tower of strength through a series of tragedies and challenging times with her business. Her son had died and trying to hold everybody else up. And she reached breaking point. This was as a GP. And amazingly, on this particular day, she was my last patient. So I could give her all the time she needed, and I think I gave her an hour. But it was the most incredible offload for her, which she'd just not had. And I quite expected when I reviewed her to have to put her on some antidepressant medication because she really was in such a bad place. But a different woman walked through the door. She just said, wow, just talking it out, I got more clarity. I'm now getting counselling for my bereavement. She, delegated things, and she was on her way. Our heads can become just this chaotic mess, which just kind of paralyzes us. And actually just getting it out, and then as a serenity prayer, is a kind of identifying where we can focus our attention, then it's so freeing, so freeing.
I think it's also I'm not an alcoholic, by the way, but it's also the prayer that Alcoholics
Yes,
Anonymous
yes, you're
talk
right.
about and reference. And with
Yeah.
that in mind, how much is sharing your experiences and even practicing from a speaking perspective, for example, by practicing by doing, can diminish the feelings of I can't do this, or I'm no good, or working with a coach? Where are you on that spectrum of seeking help and just getting into the trenches and just having a go and seeing how bad actually it could be?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? I wish I knew more about what put people off, to what extent it's financial, to what extent it's feeling stupid or feeling a failure. I've just had someone else signed up yesterday who's just admitted he'd just reached that point where he realized he needed to do something and he was ready, so he'd gone on and done it. Um, but oh, sorry, I've completely. Can you just redo the question again? I've just got carried away and forgotten the question now.
That's okay. Well, the Serenity Prayer is actually also, I think, associated with Alcoholics Anonymous. By the way, I'm
Yeah.
not an alcoholic. I've never been, but it seems to be that people go to places to share their experiences, and together they can help each other, or even speaking, we can practice by doing, and that helps diminish some of the anxiety because we can see little moments of improvement. How much do you advocate going to places or just getting in the trenches to try to improve yourself and really facing fear, discomfort head on?
Yeah, I would advocate it fully. And I think we don't know what's stopping people, but we know the power of AA for people who are alcoholics, where they're sharing it. They realize they're not the only one. They've got people they can talk to who relate to what they're struggling with and what they're going through, where they feel safe, they don't feel judged. So that is the power of those groups, as are many kind of therapy groups. And likewise, the one-to-one therapy sessions. You are in a safe space. You're not being judged. You're free to just be. I mean, I had a client she's fine now, which was great. But she was an HR manager who'd been signed off with burnout and stress and had significant stressors at work and at home. And she really benefited from just having a safe space to talk, to offload, to express her tears, her anger, her frustration, to not have to worry about her children or worry about her boss or her husband or all these other things. It was all about her, which she had never done before, put herself first. And through the course of our sessions, we looked at the way she was handling stress, the way she was lacking sort of self-worth and self-belief. We nurtured her and built her back up again. And now she's absolutely thriving. And she's actually left her job, got a new job, which she loves. And although she's got challenges still in her personal life, she's coping. She's so much more resilient. And she just emailed the other day saying, I'll be eternally grateful for getting me to this place. Thank you so much. So we've built her back up again. And I think, as we've intimated, when people are stressed, they become diminished, often mentally and physically, and can't see their way out. because their head is a fog, as again, the fight, fight, flight response, your head is chaos. You can't think clearly, you can't see light at the end of the tunnel. Actually talking to somebody who can help you reflect, see things a bit differently, help nurture your mental, physical, and emotional health is incredibly valuable to people.
Well, I'm a great fan of that. Rick, I'd like you to play a little game with me, which is I'm waking up tomorrow morning at, let's just say I'm waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to have the most stressful day ever because of all the things that then start to happen from 7 o'clock onwards. Could you give me the high level bad prescription of how I could make Friday the most stressful day ever because of actions that I choose to take from waking up at 7 o'clock? I'll say waking up at 7. Some of the bad things that I can start to do then to make my day really stressful.
Okay. Well, you can be kicking yourself because you went to bed late the night before and you haven't slept well. You can start drinking caffeinated coffee, and you've got to do some public speaking, which maybe not the case for you, but maybe you are. Maybe you're getting really anxious about that, so you can have a sip of alcohol, which one of my patients, that's how he got addicted to alcohol, was his fear of public speaking. You can miss out your meals because you're too stressed and you're too busy to do things. You can respond to emails emotionally because you're feeling emotional, you're feeling stressed and pissed off with things. You can you'll forget your meetings because you're not thinking clearly. You can have a very negative approach, saying, oh, I'm rubbish at this. Oh, you know what? I think I might get fired because I'm just not doing my job well. You can avoid contact with people because you're not feeling very sort of socially confident or competent. Yeah, there's a few things there. You can start, yes, you're snacking on
White flag. I'm all up for that. Actually, just listening to you sort of describing my worst nightmare of a day, I think my heart rate's increasing. I think my blood pressure, because you're triggering me with all the things that I don't want to do tomorrow. It's amazing how just words can start to play with the things that I don't want to be congruent with. All right, good. So it's tomorrow morning now, and I'm going to have a lovely stress-free day. What would you advocate for me if I'm waking up tomorrow and I want to be the best version of myself, super unstressed, very calm in the face of adversity, because things will come along that's going to make me challenged or confronted.
Yeah.
What would be my good morning routine? I know morning routines aren't for everybody, but what would you advocate
Yeah.
how I
But
wake up tomorrow?
Yeah, but I actually think ideally you don't want to wake up with an alarm. Ideally you want to wake up naturally. Ideally get fresh air on your face. Doesn't have to be sunshine or sunlight, but just get fresh air on your face because that helps to reestablish your natural sleeping rhythms, day-night cycle. Morning routines I think are really important actually, and especially if you're working from home, because the old routine of getting up, commuting to work, coming back adds a structure to your day, and it gives you very clear demarcation between home and work. When you're working from home, that can be a real problem. It's too easy to slip into the study or the office and to get down to work, and to work in your pajamas, and things like that. So I think having a really clear morning routine is really good at priming your brain so it's ready and knows you're about to start working. You should have a to-do list, I would recommend, from your previous day, which I'll come to at the end of your day. Make sure you are eating regularly through the day and not just snacks, but actually having a break, and having time to be mindful when you eat. So you're smelling your food, you're looking at your food, you're embracing your food. I would have regular breaks, and certainly don't have back-to-back meetings. What really good advice was, if you've got hour-long meetings, make them 45 minutes and then use the extra 15 minutes just to unwind, go to the loo, have a cup of tea, prepare for the next meeting. Likewise, 25 minutes for a half-hour meeting. I would, in terms of your work, as we've discussed, try and focus on your power hours for the bits that you are going to find hard. Try and have a block of time that's your admin time, so you're not constantly checking your emails throughout the day, which can be very disruptive and interruptive. If you really need to focus, turn off all notifications, close all tabs you don't need, so you're fully focused. I would recommend simple joys at regular intervals through the day. Now, these are also really useful as ways of coping with stress as an alternative to our unhealthy things like smoking, chocolate, etc. Simple joys are things that you enjoy that give you a lovely uplift that you can do in a few minutes, but which don't cause you harm. So examples well, I can maybe ask you yours. That some examples I've come across are, well, for me, if I'm at home playing the piano for 5 minutes, sitting outside in the garden, stroking the dog, watering the plants. I don't know what yours are, Chris. Maybe, yeah. What are your simple joys?
Well, mine would be movement, just getting out, go for a run, or even just doing some jumping jacks. It's just this change of
Yes,
state
yeah,
creates a change of emotion for me. Going
absolutely.
back on the food thing and break. So I've got a nice can of Coke in one hand, and I've got some really nice white starchy bread, and then I've got this highly processed microwave food that I'm gonna eat, and I'm gonna wash it all down with some lovely sugary Haribos. Good for my stress.
Not good. So what you've got there is a lot of sugar, essentially. You've got highly processed food, which gives you nothing sustaining, nothing nutritious, and high sugar. High sugar gives you a buzz, but then the insulin is released, puts it away, and then you get a lull. So you've got this constant spike, lull in energy levels. So you're far better to have slow release food, sugar food. So um, things like brown bread, oat cakes are good. Fruit's good, especially but not fruit with its, like an orange with its pith on, is good as well. Nuts are very, very good. They've got protein. Protein's good for filling you up as well. So try and have the minimal processing to your food as possible. And I would avoid all sugary drinks. I would stick to water, teas, decaf coffee. If you have to have, you can have a caffeinated maybe once a day, but remember it lingers in your system. I wouldn't have caffeine after 4 o'clock. And I will just come to the end of the day, because I think this is quite a useful tool for people. I talk about the debrief.
Just before you do that, if anybody's curious about the whole gut and health symbiotic relationship, I will put a link into a really good podcast by a gut specialist on how all that links together, because there's a huge relationship there. I understand.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's the end of the day, and my bad prescription. I'm on my phone. I'm just clicking through YouTube. It's late. I've still got the bright lights on in the house. I've just had a massive stinking row with my partner. We're both sat there on ends of the bed, stressed with each other, and yeah, that's me. That's how I'm going to end my day. What would be your doctor's advice for me on how I could have mended that better for me?
Yes, well, I don't think you're going to sleep. So yes, there's a lot of things there, obviously. So first of all, I would say at the end of your working day, I would encourage something like a debrief session, which is adding an extra half hour onto your end of your working day, which is a chance to reflect. So first of all, reflect on what's gone well, and feel good about things that you've done well, or things that you've enjoyed. Reflect on anything that's outstanding, maybe a conversation you had with somebody, or an email that you got that just got you thinking, but you parked it. So just, reflect on that. And then finally, write an action list of things that still need to be done. So it may be things that you're going to do tomorrow, so you'll plan for the next day, or it may be that you're going to allocate certain things to different points in your calendar. But what you've done there is you've done your housekeeping, you've tidied up the house. This is the point where your working day ends. You walk out of your office, shut the door, or you clear your things away from the living room table, or whatever's going on. And thereafter, you focus on your downtime, whether it's maybe some chores that need doing, maybe time with your partner or your children. But also, you may find that thoughts of work pop into your head, because they often do. Now, if it's something that you've remembered that is important, then I would suggest either you run into your office and just write it on your list, or that you email it to yourself. Don't spend any more time on it than that. Otherwise, if thoughts of work are just ruminating in your head, they're not allowed. So you need to find, I would say, a catchphrase. The one I use is just let it go. Let it go. My clients have had not now, just stop it. Whatever it is, just a short, succinct few words that are basically you telling your brain that you're not going there. And then go and distract yourself with something that will occupy your mind. And one idea is to think about a holiday, or planning an event, or something you're going to do at the weekend, or a Sudoku. There's a great quote, actually, which I think is lovely. You can't stop the birds flying overhead, but you can decide which ones make a nest in your hair. I think it was a Lutheran prayer or something. But if you can use that analogy for thoughts, we can't stop the thoughts that pop into our head, because they come and go all the time. But we can decide which ones we dwell on, ruminate over, the ones that then stay, that affect our behavior, our emotions, and affect our life. We have that power. So allow positive, encouraging, kind thoughts to stay, but anxious and negative ones, don't let them take hold.
You talked about moments of joy or looking for moments that perhaps make you feel different. I have a gratitude journal and I do spend time with it every day. What are your thoughts, yes or no, on that practice of trying to use that to eliminate stress?
I think it maybe won't eliminate, but it can certainly help you. And I'm a strong advocate of it. I think basically our brains are wired to look for danger. That's how it keeps us safe. So we have to work extra hard to try and establish the sort of gratitude and positivity side of things. So, and it's very easy, isn't it, if something goes wrong and then you go, oh, I'm having a rubbish day. And suddenly you defined your whole day by one thing that's gone wrong. And then your brain starts to look for things that are going wrong. So if we can actually train our brains to look for the positives, it just and think positive, and as you say, just notice, like my walk with the dog this morning, the heron on the river, and actually stopping and looking and noticing it, or a lovely comment or a lovely email, or the fact the sun's shining, or notice these things. They will add positivity to your day. They will release good chemicals within your body and brain that will help you. So I'm a
Mm.
strong advocate of that.
It's definitely when I get to work with a client, it's the words that they say sometimes that they don't even realize. And it's things like I have to could be changed to I get to. And it's these just little slight nuances of change of language. And then the subconscious brain hears that and
Yeah.
it goes, oh, okay, I get to do this presentation as opposed to I have to. And it labels it differently in terms of the subliminal thinking. I'm not a
Yeah.
neuropsychologist, but I do
No,
spend
but
a lot
that
of
is,
time.
it's so important. And I was just thinking, actually, when we talk about, oh, it's so stressful, trouble with that word is it's very emotive, isn't it? It's very subjective, and that affects how we feel. But if we say, oh, it's really challenging, that's somehow more objective, and a challenge is something to be embraced and to try and, solve. So yeah, our language is incredibly important. And the should is another one that people often have. I should do this. So it's, I want to, or as you say, I get to. So yeah, it's very, and people don't notice how they're talking are, unless it's brought up really, and then they start to become more aware of what they're saying. And
And
likewise,
also comparison. We have so many comparisons now about the number of likes or impressions, or this person's making that much money, or they're driving this particular car. Yeah, that can also cause some challenging thoughts in your own head. And
yeah.
especially if people are saying, oh, Chris, you should do this or you should do that. That's not a great help, I don't think, sometimes.
No, you're right. I mean, the world of comparison is a very, very harmful one. Either we compare people to make us feel good about ourselves. We go, oh, well, I'm better than that, than them at that. Or it makes us feel bad about ourselves because we're feeling down on ourselves. So it's not helpful. Everybody's life's different. It's very natural, and you can feel envious and things. But actually, we have to try very hard not to let those thoughts take hold because they're not helpful.
Hmm.
I agree.
Rebecca, is there something that we've not covered so far that in all your 20 years of clinical practice and also your coaching work that you do now, is there something that you would have loved me to ask you that I haven't done yet?
Um, I think we've covered quite a lot. I suppose one thing when it comes to unhealthy ways of coping with stress, the tendency to reach for the tub of ice cream or the chocolate or the cigarette. I talked about simple joys as an alternative, but I would encourage people to ask the question why. Why am I reaching for another mug of coffee? Well, it's because I'm not sleeping well. Right, okay, I need to find ways to try and improve my sleep. Why am I reaching for more chocolate? Because I'm feeling really anxious about something. Well, let me try and work on managing my anxiety. Do you see what I mean? So rather than treating the problem, actually looking for the cause and trying to explore that, I would encourage.
You're so right. And even if from a speaking perspective, like that childhood experience you talked about with Mary,
Mm.
there'll be something that happened that said you should not speak again because of,
Yeah.
and it's unpacking that and realizing that either the person had no authority to diminish you that way, or people can still improve even though what they see to be a failure is actually not a failure. It's just a learning point that they can move past. It's how we label it that can
And
be
yeah, and
uh,
like
uh,
we intimated before about the importance of language, I should probably just mention the concept of the bouncer of the brain, the part of the brain where it's called the RAS, the reticular activating system. So all our sensory information, not smell, but all the other sensory information, things we hear, we see, comes in via that, and it decides which bits the conscious brain will become aware of. So if you were in a supermarket and someone shouted Chris, you'd respond because your brain knows that that's something that it has to recognize. If someone shouted Owen or something, you probably wouldn't notice it. So, and it's like when you see something, say you've seen a yellow car and you go, oh God, look at that yellow car. The brain suddenly thinks, oh, yellow car, that's important. And suddenly you see yellow cars everywhere you're looking. So the reason I say this is our language is very important. If we're thinking about, say, public speaking, and we're thinking, oh gosh, my mouth's going to get really dry, my words aren't going to flow, I'm going to get really nervous, people are going to find me really boring, then your brain is primed for that. So it will look for the person who's yawning. It will register the person who's yawning. It will register if your mouth's a bit dry, it will suddenly think, oh, your mouth's dry. So what you need to do is say what you want. You say, my mouth will be moist, my words will flow. People are going to find me really interesting, and that will affect your posture and your confidence, but also your brain will be looking for evidence to what am I trying to say? Support those words you're giving yourself. So the language that we use about ourselves is really important. And like you said about getting up and having a good day, or managing a day well or not managing it well, get up and say, I'm going to cope well with today. Tell yourself positive, encouraging things.
I will continue to practice what I preach, which is talk kindly to yourself, because if you can't talk kindly to yourself, well, that's a really bad place to be. Rebecca, before we talk about your 3 fundamentals, what are the best ways for people to work with you, either individually or from a corporate perspective?
Yes, well, individually, if it's something that you feel you'd like to explore, Chris is going to leave the website details somewhere where people can find them, and you can look at my FAQ page, which gives a bit more information about how it works, and also you can book a free chat with me to tell me what's been going on and whether you decide whether you think I'm the right person to help you. And the one-to-ones are on Zoom, confidential, and very much just tailored to the need of everyone I speak to. In terms of corporate or even smaller businesses, I run webinars and workshops, which are a really good opportunity to educate your staff so that they are better able to recognise and manage their challenges and hopefully not bring problems to the workplace. So again, there are contact details on my website for that. And then my little book, which I alluded to earlier, that I will give a link to Chris, that will be available. It's actually on the website as well. You can access it there. But happy
All right,
to
well,
talk.
here is the website now. I'm just going to drop that in now so you can see that website, but it'll also be in the show notes as well. And I would implore you to go and get that little book. And I'm sure there is so much gold in there to explore. Rebecca, we'll end the show now in terms of landing the plane. What would be your top 3 fundamentals for me and other listeners to lead a long, healthy, joyful life, stress-free life?
Well, obviously, that's quite a tall order, asking for 3 when there's just so many. So I think number 1 is sleep. People don't realise how complex sleep is. Sleep isn't just about resting. There's all sorts of activity going on in terms of processing all the information we've taken in, calming emotion out of things we've experienced, and also resetting our hormones and repairing damaged cells. So it's vitally important. So I'd really prioritise your sleep. I don't know if we've got time to go through that here, but obviously living your day well is important. And I've put there's advice in my little book on sleep, and there's also a blog on my website about sleep. Secondly is breathing, which we've alluded to as well. Just be aware of your breathing, and just now and again, just do some lovely deep breaths and allow yourself even 5 minutes just to do some calming breaths. And the third one is nature. Nature is free. It's available. It's the most incredible tonic. Studies do show that incorporating nature into your day improves happiness and well-being. So find ways to incorporate nature into your day, and I think that will really help.
I'm going to go and put up a hammock in the forest and go to sleep. I think then that seems like a good way to end our discussion.
Perfect.
Rebecca, thank you so much for actually, while talking, I've felt myself breathing slower in certain circumstances. Just by you talking about breathing, I've actually found myself breathing more deeply from my diaphragm, and actually I felt calm. So thank you for that.
Oh, that's great. That's lovely.
To everyone listening, please subscribe if you want to hear more experts like Rebecca. And remember, you're in good company. I feel nervous. Rebecca feels nervous picking up her violin. It is there to help you as opposed to hinder you. But when it becomes something that's overwhelming, then perhaps you should reach out to somebody like Rebecca.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. It's been a joy.
Thank you so much. Catch you soon with Speak and Serve.